Zephaniah chapter number 2. All right. Zephaniah chapter number 2, we're going to read through the chapter, starting at verse 1. It says, "Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. Before the decree bring forth, before the day passes the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. Seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Woe unto the inhabitants of the sea coast, the nation of the Kerethites. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, the land of the Philistines. I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. And the sea coast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds for flocks. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed thereon. In the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening. For the Lord their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. I have heard the reproach of Moab and the revilings of the children of Ammon, whereby they have reproached my people and magnified themselves against their border. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab shall be as Sodom, and the children of Ammon as Gomorrah, even the breeding of nettles and salt pits and perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall spoil them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. This shall they have for their pride, because they have reproached and magnified themselves against the people of the Lord of hosts. The Lord will be terrible unto them, for he will famish all the gods of the earth, and men shall worship him, every one from his place, even all the isles of the heathen. The Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by the sword. And he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria, and will make Nineveh a desolation and dry like a wilderness. And flocks shall lie down in the midst of her, and all the beasts of the nation, both the cormorant and the bittern, shall lodge in the upper lintels of it. Their voice shall sing in the windows. Desolation shall be in the thresholds, for he shall uncover the cedar work. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly, that said in her heart, I am, and there is none beside me. How is she become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down in? Every one that passeth by shall hiss and wag his hand. Zephaniah chapter number 2. I'll give you a quick view. Chapter number 1 is angled at Israel. Chapter number 2 is angled at the nations. But it has to do again with the context of the day of the Lord. Any thoughts, comments, feedbacks here before I give you what we've got tonight? Anything at all? Yeah, you know what? That was my wife. She told you that as well, didn't she? Yeah. Cornelius asked, and she said Zechariah chapter number 2. So you're good for a couple of weeks, though. We'll come back to you in about November. We'll get through Haggai. Yes. That is in verse number 14. The cormorant and the bittern. Yes. Yeah. 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 Jeff. Yeah. Yeah. A rejoicing city that dwells carelessly. What does that look like today? Yeah, it looks like for us it looks like Northbridge, and people are out flowing in the streets and in and out of bars and clubs and clinking of glasses and the music, and it looks like the cities that have a 60,000 plus stadium that just people come flocking in to watch football and out, and then in to watch a concert and out, and in to watch the cricket and out, and they're just living life and they're loving it. And they're having great fun, and they're going down to the beach and they're going doing all these things carelessly before God. Couldn't care less. But the city is full of joy, and the city is full of vibrancy, and those cities become a desolation. It's crazy to think that the vibrancy of our city, that it would ever be a wasteland. We think, no, this is gonna go on for millennia. This city is gonna be here for a long time. But there's actually not that promise in the Bible. It's gonna be the works of man's hands, a desolation. And in fact, that's what he is saying here, where he gives those cities of Gaza and Ashkelon and Ekron and Ashdod, which are the Philistines. If you have a map in your head of Israel, it's to the left. It's on the coast, the southern coast of what Israel is where the Philistines were. That's where the Philistines are. Ammon and Moab are on the other side. They are the children from Lot and his daughters, Ammon and Moab. They are those kids. They're on the other side on the eastern side. And then he goes down south into Egypt, and you go north up into Assyria. And again, Nineveh in its day, if you study anything, Nineveh was like the chief city. It was like a New York. It was like a Paris. It was like a London. It's like a chief city that was the glory of all the earth, up there with a Babylon. And Nineveh was this amazing city that all the kings and all the princes would flow into. An amazing city to visit. That it was a travel destination, and now it's going to be ruins, and it's just going to be so desolate that there's just the cormorant and the bittern and the beasts of the field are just going to be inhabiting it. You think of in South America, on the Yucatan Peninsula. If you know the eastern coast of Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, which is where Cancun is. Been there. I've never actually been there myself, but it's very popular. But is it the Mayans or the Aztecs? I can't remember which one it is. I tell you, I get them mixed up all the time. So I'll just say confidently. So the Mayans are there, and there's all those ruins that are there. That are on the Yucatan Peninsula that are just ruins now. But they weren't once ruins. There used to be a thriving, bustling civilization that lived there, and now it is just desolate. In fact, they've cleared it all back so you can go and see the ruins, but they had to clear it back because the jungle took it over and grew it all up and over and around. And they had to hack back the jungle to find the ruins again. And you think of that with Nineveh, where once it was a thriving metropolis, and then God brings judgment upon it, and then it's literally the sands of the desert has just blown into it, and there's broken down walls, and there's just random trees growing here and there. It's a wasteland, and there's just birds sitting in these shells of houses that make their place upon the threshold and upon the lintels, and some random shepherd is coming along with his sheep, and they're just dwelling around these ruins, which once was like hundreds of thousands of people, bustling activity with commerce and trade and noise and joy and all of the things that you think of as a city and the vibrancy of it, gone. removed. And all of those cities were like that, vibrant in its day. And in their day, they would never conceive. Like we look back and think, oh yeah, Nineveh's a ruin. Yeah, it's happened. Yeah, Gaza, yeah, it's all wasteland now. No, back in that day, it was vibrant. It's like saying Perth and Adelaide and Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane will be a desolation. It's like, what? No, that's not going to happen. I can't even imagine those things. That would not happen. These places, too many people, too vibrant. These will not be barren wastelands. It's like saying that. That's what the prophecy is. And it was exactly how it is. It's now like that. We look back at these barren wastelands that man thinks, my works are going to last forever. They're going to be monuments to every generation after me. And it's just not true. But he says he's going to bring in the judgment of God. And these things are going to be a howling wasteland and a wilderness. And he's going to bring fear upon them, on these cities that dwell carelessly and rejoicing in their hearts and have pride against God and how they respond to the people of God. But the first three verses says this: gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. Go back to Joel real quick, because I think all of these minor prophets, again, in the Torah or the Tanakh, the Hebrew Old Testament, which is what we have as the Old Testament, the Tanakh, they have the minor prophets. The 12 books of the minor prophets are all actually the book of the prophets. One book. They're linked. They're put into one thing. So I think there's a common theme that is relayed over and over. But in the book of Joel, and chapter 1, verse 14, it says, sanctify ye a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord their God, and cry unto the Lord. Like, come together, gather together, and cry unto God. He says the same thing in chapter number 2 and verse number 15, where he says, blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, get the people together, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that suck the breast, let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber and the bride out of her closet. So let them come together and let them beseech God for mercy. Them that fear God, come together and beseech him for mercy. Is what he's saying in Joel. He's saying the same thing. Gather together, come together. Look at verse 2. Before the decree bring forth, before the day of the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. Meet and assemble and gather and cry unto God before his judgment comes. Most people wait for the judgment to come and then they cry out, like the foolish person who rejects wisdom in chapter number 1. But when the calamity comes, then wisdom mocks and laughs at the calamity, because once their foolishness has come upon them, it's too late to cry out for wisdom. And once judgment comes, it's too late to cry out. So he says, cry out before. Now is the time to seek God. Now is the time to seek after him. Seek the Lord, he says in the next verse. Seek the Lord, all the meek of the earth which have wrought his judgments. Seek righteousness and seek meekness. Even in impending judgment, he is saying, seek God. Seek him now. For what purpose? Well, look what he says here. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. Now, I know we always want to think about the rapture, and we're going to say, oh, we're not going to be here when God's judgment comes. But outside of that, God's judgment comes, and the people of God have been around for the judgment of God. I don't know about you, but when the judgment of God comes, I want to be hid. God, protect me from that judgment. Protect me from those things. Think about this particular day that they are talking about, that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come and he's going to wipe out all of these nations and he's going to destroy them all. It's going to be a time of war and pestilence and famine and disease and trouble and anguish and sorrow and fear and all of those things. But in amongst all of that, there are at least 3 that I can think of God-fearing men: Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah. And in amongst all of the chaos, you know what? God protected them. He hid them. He hid Jeremiah in a well. He went down there for a little while, but he found the favor of the king, and Daniel found the favor of the king, and Ezekiel, God looked after and protected, and even in captivity. And so he says, seek God that you may be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. These men walked with God, and God hid them and protected them in amongst all of the calamity and the chaos that was going around them. And so seek ye the Lord, all the meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness and seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. And there is, even in amongst judgment, if we find ourselves in the midst of the judgment of God, as many have throughout history, he says, you seek God, and that God protects in the midst of his judgment. He protects his people, and he hides them, and they are hidden away from the famine and the pestilences and the sword and the things that devoured. Daniel and Ezekiel and Jeremiah, God hid in those days. So I'd say, even if the judgment isn't coming upon you, seek the Lord nonetheless, that he may be merciful and gracious to you. And because those that that claimed the name of God but never sought him, when the judgment came, it came upon them. And so seek the Lord that you may be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. We'll leave off there, and we'll build on that as we go.